Hello again, fellow YouTubers. Solomon Pleasant here for Team O.M.G. Vanguard, and today is our start of the clan analysis. So, I find it funny how each one of my analysis gets bigger and bigger each time I do it. Like, the first time I just kind of threw cards on the table and just like, hey, here it is. Second time I did it with Monty, we split it up into, like, nations, and then talked about each clan, each nation. And now this time we're just divvying up clan by clan by clan. These aren't all being recorded at the same time, so that's just a sign that certain things are going to be said at certain times, and blah 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 blah. And I'm definitely going to get some help. Monty's going to definitely help me with a couple clans, and T's going to help me with a couple, and the rest I'll just do on my own because YOLO. So, let's get started. Our first clan, obviously the first clan to be introduced, Royal Paladin. So, from the United Sanctuary. What do these guys do? Well, Royal Paladin's main gimmick and their main focus is building up rearguards. However, Royal Paladin is a very vanilla deck, and when I say vanilla, I mean you can pretty much run it almost any way you want, with the clan rules abiding because, you know, Royal Paladins can't call from the drop zone really that well, but one big thing they really like doing is superior calling, which some other clans like doing, but this one does it a little bit differently because they don't really get much power from superior calling. They just superior call to fill up their rearguards, and then those full rearguards basically allow you to get off skills. So you don't get skills from the actual superior call, you get it more from the fact that you have stuff on the field, which means if you play stuff on the field, that'll work just fine. Another big thing that they do, they like giving themselves 5,000 power for a lot of things. As it says on the wiki right here, Royal Paladins have about the same focus as multiple attacks like Nova's, Spikes, or Aqua Force. Yeah, Royals are capable of multiple attacks, but honestly, I don't see them that kind of way as that kind of deck. I see them more as a deck where you kind of just build up a strong enough like power and defense, like have a very consistent power and defense, build up your field, and then start attacking once you've gotten to that grade 3 and you have that power boost to basically start hitting for heavy points. Over the years, Season 1, main character O.M.G uses it. It's a standard Alfred Soul Saver build, more focusing on Alfred and really focusing on Blaster Blade. I wonder why. Season 2, they aren't there because we need to introduce Golds, and Shadows and Royals were too popular, I guess. And Kagero because, well, let's just troll Kagero. Season 3, we get Corrin using the Jewel Knights archetype, which we'll talk about them later. And then that season that never came to America, we have Kai using it. I do wonder why it never came to America. And that's when we start seeing Seekers. And then Season 5, we get more Seekers, and honestly, I'm not going to really talk much about Season 5 because it's just not even. And I'll just say the stride units right off the bat for Royals aren't really that much to begin with. And one thing I'll just say about Royal decks in general, they don't really change. Like, certain clans have kind of changed their style. I'm just trying to think. Novas have definitely kind of altered throughout the years. They started with just Azir Kaiser and drive checking grade 3s to stand up and just having gimmicky ways to stand up. And then as the years go by, we see that they start to develop more consistent ways of standing up. So, this clan, however, just decides to stay the same. So, as you can see, we have archetypes right here. We'll talk about Sanctuary of Light a whole lot later. Just start with Season 1. So, O.M.G's first Season 1 deck that actually was a deck would be the Alfred Soul Saver Dragon mix combo. And as you can see right here, Alfred early's just on here because Alfred himself is an archetype. So, what O.M.G's original deck focused on was having Blaster Blade in it at all times, and basically just kind of slightly building up a soul while getting your rearguards associated, and then riding to normal Alfred, which normal Alfred stated that each rearguard got, like, you got +1 for each rearguard or something of that nature. You got a power boost for each rearguard. So you'd pretty much just sit on Alfred and just kind of charge up your soul slightly and just keep calling out rearguards until you have the perfect, like, formation that you want to deliver the finishing blow. And then you just wait to get Soul Saver, ride Soul Saver, Soul Blast, get +5 to a bunch of stuff, and then just go for that finishing blow with that. Now, and it wasn't that bad of a deck, in all honesty. Alfred Early right here helps you get out Blaster Blade, so he guarantees you a rearguard, which is nice. Not a lot of people use Soul Saver Alfred deck anymore, but I still think it can be a viable deck if you put the right units in. Like, if you put some current units in that aren't specific to an archetype, it could be a very viable deck that still can deliver consistent playthroughs, because it does manage to rack up a good source of power, and unlike a lot more decks nowadays that focus on more gimmick-based things and are a bit more specific, I'm distracted for a second, and a bit more specific on, what's the word I'm looking for? More specific on certain units, whereas the Alfred deck focuses more on just having units and just calling them out. Yeah. So it isn't the best deck now, but I still think it's a very viable strategy for how you would fight in a Royal Paladin deck. And before moving on to the Season 3 decks of Royal Paladin, I figured I should just talk about the Majesty Lord Blaster deck and blasters in general. Blasters themselves don't really have a concept, but the Majesty Lord Blaster deck does. What this deck does is it says, hey, I can mix clan, unlike the rest of you, because Bushiroad decides let's not have fun. So, he basically says, hey, Blaster Dart, Blaster Blade, get into my soul, I get +2 and a crit for the rest of the game, which is pretty good. And basically this deck was focused on just getting those units in and then just power rushing it until you can... Just basically power rushing it until you can, like, kill your opponent. Now, it's not the smartest deck build, but it's a very consistent deck build, because once you get that Blaster Dark and that Blaster Blade in there, you're pretty much dealing with an extra crit every turn. So, keeping that in mind, that's actually a really good way of doing it. Being a 12k power base before its time, like, Majesty Lord Blaster has always been a deck that has interested a lot of people have tried building it, a lot of people did, and then it just died because when Gold Paladins came out, they were just automatically better, which kind of disappoints me because I feel this deck can still win fights, and when you combo this deck with the Break Ride, it becomes a very viable deck. I think it's still a very good strategy. Would I run it? No. Grant, I wouldn't run Royal Paladins in general just because it's not my play style, but I can still see this deck kind of being used because it doesn't really rely on much. It just says, hey, +2 and a crit. I think that's pretty good. And now as we get into Season 3, we see Royal Paladin's first actual full deck archetype, Jewel Knights. What are Jewel Knights? Pretty much the exact same freaking thing as every other Royal Paladin deck. They pretty much add nothing new to the table. The only thing they can do better is, hey, I have a Break Ride. Now, some people actually still use Jewel Knights, so I'm gonna try not to bash them so hard, but let's be honest, guys. They don't really add much to the table. Oh, I get power and I superior call units. Guess what? Every other Royal Paladin deck does that. They just have an archetype for it, so now they get a little bit more power. Like, there really isn't much to them that's different from any other Royal Paladin deck that's come out. I guess if you're gonna say it takes a little less build-up, because Soul Saver did take a little bit, and Majesty Lord Blaster did take a bit more of the soul. Like, Season 1 Royal Paladin decks did actually focus a little bit more on the soul than Jewel Knights do. So I guess there's that, but like, there really isn't much to them other than that. They still just superior call, get power, That's it. And that's why Jewel Knights are ending up as being one of the weaker archetypes, because why do you think we went to Seekers in Season 4 and 5? Because Jewel Knights just didn't really cut it. Like, by themselves, they aren't that much. Can they go into other decks and be amazing? Yes. It's funny because the Jewel Knight Break Ride sucks in Jewel Knights, but it works great in Majesty Lord because Majesty Lord really needs that extra power and crit, so he's just great at beat sticking, which is all the Jewel Knight Break Ride does. It beat sticks. That's it. And yeah, they just do not add much, like just Superior Call Jewel Knights. That's really all they do. And that's why I put, like, Ashley as, I think, the worst reverse, because it just does the same as the rest of the archetype, which the archetype kind of sucks, so there's not much more you can really say. Like, people still use Salome, which, thanks for at least doing that, because I was getting real sick of seeing nothing but Seekers, but they're not that good, guys. They're really not. Like, there's so many different Royal Paladin... Like, if you wanted to do a Royal Paladin build from Season 3 or below, you might as well do something like Garmwar's Wolf Pack, which is a very interesting deck that I think would be better discussed once Monty actually decides to do deck profiles. Or, you know, just Alfred's Soul Saver, because at least those are cheaper. Or Majesty Lord plus the Break Ride. I mean, there's so many things you could do that don't restrict you to the archetype and can pretty much give you the exact same thing. So, they aren't the best, I'm gonna be honest. And finally, let's talk about Seekers. I don't like Seekers, not because they're bad. They pretty much do what every other Royal Paladin deck does. Get out units and get power from it, so... Like, overall, Royal Paladin likes to keep their deck play very consistent. Just get out Royal Paladins. Get them out, get power for having those rear guards, and then attack. Gotta love internet crashes. Alright. Like, Royal Paladins all together kind of focus on the same playstyle. Get out rear guards, get power for them. There's no real, like... It's just kind of a difference on what your grade 3 lineup is and how you like to run it. That's really the only difference in decks of Royal Paladin. Why don't I like Seekers? Well, for one, Season 4 Seekers banked on Legion so freaking much it was really annoying because of how much I hate Legion. And I'm not gonna really go much more into that because I already have a rant video on that so many people like to call me out for. Why else don't I like Seekers? Season 5 Seekers actually aren't that bad. They pretty much just take the Seeker triggers and just be like, hey, here's new stuff. But the biggest reason I hate Seekers is because of this card right here. Seekers, it's not Sing, it's Thing Saber Dragon. Because we are great at translating, it's Thing Saber Dragon, so all you fans of Royal Paladins can eat on that! Anyway, I just love doing that. That unit right there, like Blaster Blade I'm fine with. I've never really hated Blaster Blade per se because he nerfs a unit. He blows up a unit, that's really all he does, and I can't really hate him for that. He's just doing his job. Like, blow up a counterblast, blow up a unit, like, that's all he really does, and we'll talk about him later as a specific card, but I really do not like Thing Saber Dragon. Why? Because it just stands up for cheap costs. Counterblast 2, Soul Blast 2, stand back up for another attack. Boy, do I hate that. Because it's so cheap to get off, it's just no. Just no. And the fact that it's comboed with Legion really agitates me. It really does. I hate seeing Thing Saber. I really hate Thing Saber. I hate Legion in general, but Thing Saber especially is on my hate list of just cards that make me want to burn things. Other than that, the Seeker playstyle is pretty much the same as any other Royal Paladin deck. Get out units, get power. Royal Paladins are consistent in that way, unlike other decks where they aren't as consistent. Thank you. Alright, so I just have it on this because my internet just loves screwing with me and just freezing whenever it willy-nilly wants to. Before I talk about, like, a zero that should be mentioned, which you can kind of see right there, I should probably talk about, like, how most Royal Paladin decks are run, as opposed to Essentials. When it comes to a trigger lineup, besides your standard heal triggers, most Royal Paladin decks are going to be more critical heavy. Just because a lot of decks are more critical heavy nowadays. Like, majority of clans will be critical heavy. There are some clans that are more stand heavy and some that are more draw heavy. But for the most part, most clans are going to be critical heavy. So I'm just going to say that right now, but I still like addressing it because there are a few clans that aren't critical heavy. But Royal Paladins, it's better to run mostly crit than anything else. As for P-Guards, you can run any number that you want. Because unlike certain clans that need that guardage, Royals don't really necessarily need P-Guards. P-Guards are just kind of there as, like, filler for when you don't have cards that are just like, oh, I really don't need anything else from a grade 1 lineup. I have the grade 1 lineup I need, so P-Guards. So, let's talk about this specific grade 0 unit, Barkall. I feel like mentioning him just because he was the first card to ever figure out a way to Superior Ride, and he was so good that he even got banned for a while, and he's still banned in America, because Barkall. And, yeah. Barkall has been that unit that just hasn't come back from the dead because America's really lazy and they're banless. We're lazy. Oh well. But it's still a valid unit, and for funsies, like, he's probably one of the best Royal Paladin starters for funsies, because you can get Blaster Blade onto your Vanguard a whole lot faster, and that's what makes him awesome. Now, as for grade 1s that should be mentioned, there wasn't really I had planned, but I thought, I should mention this one. Summoning Jewel Knight Gloria. Why talk about her? The first spam guard ever invented. What's a spam guard, you may ask? Well, it's actually considered a quintet wall, and I say that with quotations because nobody calls it that. Well, everybody except me calls it that, because here's what it does. Counterblast 1, place this on the guard zone, put the top 5 cards of your deck into the guard zone as rest. And then they all go to the drop zone at the end of the turn. So, put the top 5 cards of your deck into the guard zone. Spam guard. You spam the field with guard. It's a spam guard. Like, you can call it whatever you want, it's a spam guard. And it's funny because when this first came out, people thought this was ridiculously broke, and I will even throw T under the bus and say that he thought it was going to get nerfed in America. And I can do this because I am a horrible person. But after, like, every clan got a spam guard, people were just like, oh, spam guards. And then, like, hey, Legion, that's really good. And then Legion died. And then we got Stride. And then we got, oh, spam guards. Oh, okay, they're a thing. And it's still considered a Sentinel, so you can only run 4 max, and you can't run it with P-Guards. So, yeah, just felt like mentioning it just because it was the first one to ever be made. So when it first came out, it was a very big impact on the game. Especially for, like, Limit Break decks that's like, hey, one more attack, and then everybody remembers Spam Guards as the card that keeps screwing Kamui over. Because he could win the game if both Corrin and Nightshade didn't have a Spam Guard in their hand. Kamui totally could have won either of those fights if they didn't have a Spam Guard. He could have easily won. But nope. Spam Guards. So I bet most of you are thinking, Solomon, what exactly are you going to choose for a grade 2? Gee, what do you think? A freaking poster child for the entire Bushiroad Foundation and card fight in general. Here we have Blaster Blade. The card that's gotten so many reprints, so many alter arts, so many alter cards for it, it's freaking ridiculous. There are so many Blaster Blades out there that it's not even worth talking about all of them. What does he do? Blows up a rear guard. That's his job. I'm not upset with normal Blaster Blade. I'm not. Like, he's fine on his own. he's a fine card. Sure, he gets Legion with, like, everything. Like, he Legions with, God, so many cards, but I don't really hate him. I just more laugh at the fact of how many times he's been reborn, remade, redone. It's ridiculous. And it looks like here he's got another art, because his art is infinite. You cannot stop Blaster Blade. Like, look at this! Look at this! This is ridiculous! Of how many he's in! He's got so many just crazy. And his original thing is just Counterblast 2 to blow something up, but yeah, he's just a card that he's a mage. He is the fanboy card. He is the ultimate fanboy card. Is he bad? No, he's a fine unit. Add him in your deck. Go right ahead. It won't hurt, and it won't really hurt your deck. Will it help it? Depends on what kind of deck you run, but aside from Jewel Knights, like, he can pretty much be put in any deck. That's Royal Paladin, so do what you want with him. Doesn't really matter. He's a fine unit. It's just ridiculous of how much art and stuff he has. So, Blaster Blade for everybody. And now for grade 3s. Now, there really aren't any other grade 3s to mention besides Alfred and Soul Saver or Thing Saver, because I talked about them in decks. There is, however, one awful garbage grade 3 that is also a deck that I should probably mention. The Sanctuary of Light build with Sanctuary of Light Pentacle Dragon. I think that's how you say it. Definition of garbage within card fight. This is a bad deck. For anyone who tries to play this deck, you're dead. You've already died. There's no hope for you of winning a fight with this deck. Because it just does not work. Because their concept is call out copies of themselves in order to power up. Yeah, there's a whopping 5 cards that don't do jack diddly on rearguard and are just there on rearguard. No, it's just no. You don't run this. It's very, very simple. Like, this thing powers up if you do some certain call cost, but, like, no, it's just not. It is a garbage card. I'm just gonna look at its skill just to enhance the amount of garbage that this thing is. Like, and I've seen people talk about this card. They've battered it to the point where it should be able to stand up, but it does. So its limit break skill is, when this unit attacks a Vanguard, all of your Sanctuary of Light cards get plus 3,000. Okay, so that's actually a relatively decent skill. Everybody gets plus 3. Carol has 2 when this unit is placed on Vanguard. You pay the cost. If you do, search your deck for up to 1 Sanctuary of Light card in its name, call to rear guard. Alright, standard call cost, and when I'm using the ride chain, I get plus 1. Alright, so it's a ride chain. Why does everybody hate it then? Because there are only 5 Sanctuary of Light cards ever. This deck can't work on the grounds that, for one, there's only one other grade 3 and it doesn't even do anything on rearguard, so it doesn't even benefit to call to rearguard. The grade 2, there's one grade 2 Sanctuary of Light, one grade 1 Sanctuary of Light, and a grade 0. So you're pretty much forced, if you want to get this skill off and give everybody plus 3, you're forced to have a bunch of cards on the field that aren't essentially your best bets. But, you know, maybe some people were wrong, and maybe and again, this is a ride chain, so you're already down 2 of your grade 1, your grade 2s, leaving you with only 3 of each. Which, sure, there's 5 spots on the field, you can have something on the field, so you may not be able to power up your whole field, but what do the grade 2s and grade 1s do on rearguard? Let's see. When you have When this unit rides something, okay, okay, so this one has a Vanguard skill and is just a 9k on rearguard. Why would I want this on rearguard? You don't! You don't want this on rearguard because it's not... These guys are just basically the guys that help you get off the ride chain and then call out rearguards. Like, no, there is no point to this because it's a fruitless task. Because your grade 1 and grade 2s don't do anything, they're just gonna get +3. Ooh, +3. It's not like anyone else can do that for a better cost. Like, wow, are these guys bad? Wow. They are really, really bad. And nobody runs the Sanctuary of Light deck. I can tell you that right now. If someone would take up this dare and try to make Sanctuary of Light good, go right ahead and try. Let's see what happens. I would love to see a full Sanctuary of Light deck that actually looks decent. Would love to see that. But until they get new support, or until somebody finds a broken way to use them, you're kind of screwed on what this deck is capable of doing. Like, wow. Is this deck bad? Okay, so my computer decided to crash because I guess it doesn't like Royal Paladins. Alright, so I'm going to finish this off super quick. Royal Paladins. Where are they on the scale of being a good deck? I'd say they're right in the middle, maybe closer to being top tier. Why do I say that? Because while they can be good at powering up, they're also really not much. Like, there's only one way to do it. There's only really one way you can run Royal Paladins. Like, I guess you could say the same about Spike Brothers, but at the very least, Spike Brothers messes it up on how they do their thing. Or Granblue, they mess up and change, kind of, on certain ways of getting stuff out. Whereas Royals, they do kind of the same thing over and over and over, just with different archetypes. While Seekers can be really, really good at times, it's still kind of the same thing. They just have more broken cards to use with them, as opposed to Season 1 Royal Paladins. They're still a very viable deck, and they're arguably one of the cheaper decks, they're one of the most vanilla decks, they're probably the first deck of a lot of people, so they're not a bad clan. They're like the starter clan. They're the first clan, so I can't really hold much against them because of how they work and everything, but I will say that they could try a little bit harder on making their concept a bit more fluent and a bit more diverse in how they run it. So, not the most diverse, but certainly not the weakest clan. Like, they're not a bad clan, by any means. So, I think that's all I got for this one. This was a long one. So, this is Solomon Pleasant for Team O.M.G. Vanguard, with my clan analysis video starting up. Solomon Pleasant, signing off.